pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before we get started, let me just explain that even though the screen is active up there, there is no Zoom access tonight. Those of you who were here at our last meeting saw that we were hacked into. So to prevent that, the meeting is not going to be accessible for Zoom tonight. Going forward, if any applicants or applicant consultants or our consultants need remote access, they will be given remote access, and only those people will be given remote access. There will be no public remote access, nor any public access or remote access for board members, because that starts a whole other situation where their location would have to be advertised. People could literally go to that location to join the meeting, so I don't think any of us want that. So it'll be just for applicants, applicant consultants, and our consultants. Okay. So our first item tonight is a reopening, I think, of the public hearing for Tuxedo Farms for a clearing, filling, and grading permit. So can I have a second to open
the minutes of the meeting?
Pardon? No, that's before the meeting. That's before the regular meeting.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion. Can I have a second on that?
Second.
So the public hearing is now open, and I would ask a representative for Tuxedo Farms to explain what you are asking for.
So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Brad Schwartz from Zarin Steinmetz. I'm joined by Steve Dahl from Lennar. Steve will give an introduction about himself and Lennar, I guess, in a few minutes. Before we start by diving right into the public hearing, Chuck Hutchig from Langen is here, together with his colleague Steve Saputo, and Mr. Hutchig will describe the clearing, grading, filling permit, purposes of it, and where its staging area is. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chuck Hutchig. I'm an associate with the firm of Langen Engineering, and I'm filling in tonight for my colleagues who usually appear before you. So I'm a fill-in for tonight, but it's a pretty straightforward application, so I agreed to come and do the presentation. What we're looking to get a permit to do is to set aside 2 acres in East Terrace to be used as a contractor's yard, a staging area, a place where material can be processed. Very similar to what this same area was used by Related when they did their work. So this is already a disturbed portion of the site. It's already cleared. Our activity, for the most part, it's level. So really, if we're selected to get the permit and we go to set this up, our work is really about creating a tracking pad off the street and putting up a silt fence. So it's not a lot of disturbance. That disturbance has already been done.
When you refer to East Terrace, whatever, could you point it out on?
Sure, which I would. So I understand most of you are familiar with the overall site. So Quail Trail runs through the site, comes out. West Terrace is on the west side of that. East Terrace is located down here, and the Commons is in the middle. Now there are other sections to this, but those are the components that this area that we want to set up a contractor yard will service. And again, the goal here is to be able to take rock and process it and reuse it, to stockpile excess material that may come from one phase that we'll use in another, so we don't want to have to haul it off. So that's kind of the intent of this area. And again, very similar to what Related used it for when they were working on the site. So this is a block of the site. Again, Quail Drive is here, coming through. This is West Terrace, the Commons, and this is where East Terrace is located. And the highlighted area in yellow is the yard that we're proposing to create.
Cannot see what's yellow at all. Can you sort of run your finger on it? Thanks.
Well, it's yellow highlighter, sometimes looks lime.
The highlighted area in the middle of the map is where we want to set up the we saw comments from the consulting engineer. There's some cleanup things that he suggested we do to the drawings. Nothing that's really significant from our perspective. And it's really no more complicated than that, so I'd be glad to answer any engineering questions you might have relative to what's being proposed.
Sean, do you want to add anything before I ask the board for any questions?
If you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I can just kind of quickly go through some of my comments, and then I can answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, yes, please.
So this is a little bit different. It's regulated firstly under the special permit. Special permit requires compliance with your code, section 9843, which is a clearing, filling, and grading portion. It also has some additional requirements in there. One of the requirements is for a tree survey. I tried to do an overlay myself. I think the areas that they've indicated have already been disturbed. I don't think there's any trees at all in those areas, so I've asked the applicant to confirm that. If there's no trees, there's no purpose to have a tree survey rather. There is a requirement for an environmental compliance document in the special permit. I think that's just a matter of the applicant submitting that in connection with the clearing, filling, and grading. They've already addressed a number of the items that are required into that document. They just need to kind of get it into one binding and make a submission to the building department so they have it. I've asked them to identify the anticipated volume of material to be stored on site to confirm that the area is adequate and also give the height. The reason for the height is if they are stockpiling material, I want the building inspector to have some sort of quantitative measure to know when they've reached their limit on that site, when it's reached what's been designed for. Otherwise, I question just the location of the driveway where they're going to have that tracking pad. It looks like they already have 2 curb cuts into this area that they could utilize and maybe not need to have another 3rd curb cut. Sorry about that. And then in terms of the SWIP, they've already have stormwater coverage with the DEC, but they've indicated they'd be providing a stormwater report as they disturb each neighborhood. I think they need to submit that as well. The code allows for performance bonds, but that's to protect town roads or state roads that may be damaged. That I don't think that what they're proposing now, material is going to go from one neighborhood to another, so I don't think the performance bond comes into play. Then lastly, I just suggested the applicant be very careful with the expiration date of the permit. Once you approve the plan, the building inspector issues the permit. They have 12 months to use the site, and then they would have an additional 12-month period if you have another public hearing. If they pull the permit now, I don't necessarily think they're looking to use the site right away. So I would just suggest that they wait until they're ready to use it before they get that permit.
Since all that soil is going to stay on site, no testing is needed?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman.
And one other thing that I want to add is we cannot approve that permit tonight because we're waiting for the county response, which we have to do, the GML response.
239.
Exactly.
Right. Understand.
So with that, Susan, you have any questions on this? Comments?
The only question I had goes to what Sean was talking about with the extra cutouts. Will you be addressing that?
We will.
Okay.
We will. We're not looking to make this any more complicated. If we can use one of the existing ones to get into the site, we will. Unfortunately, I don't know the 2 existing curb cuts that well. Otherwise, I'd try and be more straightforward with an answer, but I think we'll figure out a way to use one of the existing ones if it makes sense.
Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Bill?
Just one question, is any effort going to be made to prevent the piles from getting sort of washed down and dissolve, leaving the rocks exposed, or is it just, it's going to go natural, or you're going to cover it, or?
So we'll be obligated under our SWIP to maintain those stockpiles in a certain way. If they sit idle for a certain period of time, 7 days, they have to be seeded and mulched. They have to have silt fences around them, so they're not going to be allowed just to go.
Yeah.
And again, the purpose here for this is really the reuse of this material. So where we have excess from one portion of a project, we want to put it here, we want to be able to move it. So the answer to your question is we don't want to let this go.
I get that, it's just that you were talking about having material from one phase that you could use in the next phase, and that
Correct.
sounds like there might be some substantial time between gathering and using. That's all there's.
There could be, and if that happens, we are obligated under our SWIP to stabilize and seed mulch the areas.
Otherwise, it's going to get a pile of weeds.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Susan? Nothing?
No, pretty straightforward.
No questions.
I have one additional, what prevents another, say, builder that may need some of your material that you have stockpiled? Would they be able to go onto your property and say, borrow some material from you?
I would think it'd be very unlikely that Lennar would do something like that. I
Okay,
mean, our goal at the end of the project is to balance the earthwork on the site.
right,
So that's what we're shooting for. So in a perfect world, there won't be any excess material for anybody to come get or bring onto the site.
okay, all right.
Again, we're not quite there yet, because as you know, there are phases that we haven't even contemplated the full design of yet, but that's our objective. So I think we would be very hesitant to do anything other than manage this material on site.
Arthur, just so you know, the reason why I asked that question is there are 3 other major developments going on Sterling Mine. So they may need material, so they may want to purchase it from you guys. So that's the only reason I asked the question, of course, the roadways, but, okay.
We'll
that's it.
be greedy about our fill for a while, make sure we've got enough to satisfy our project. And as you know, that brings in all other issues, right? Now there's a testing requirement, now there's a tracking mechanism, where to come from, where is it going to? So at this point, I think our hopes and our goal is that our material stays on site and we can get it to the balance.
Gotcha, all right, thank you.
Just to cover that scenario, Kelly, we should probably put a condition in that if soil is transported off-site, it should be tested? Yes? No?
I'm just
The
taking it.
receiving end is going to have to do that anyways, to take
Yeah,
it.
I don't understand why we would test.
I don't think that you would test, I think
I think
right
it's
now you're
receiving.
saying no
Receiving.
export of any soil, and then if it is exported,
Matter
other
of
people
us.
have to do some testing, but I'll craft a condition to kind of address that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have several members of the public here, if they would want to comment on this, since it is a public hearing.
I'm
Kevin?
good on this one, John, thank you.
Okay. Ken?
No, the issue of the expiration in 12 months and that it can be renewed apparently for an additional 12 months, I think I understand that. The only, I'm not even concerned, but question was, it was mentioned by Sean that the height of the piles would be prescribed or
Yes.
agreed upon before.
Yeah, so right now, they've identified an area. When you're out in the field, you really don't know, where that is. You don't have any reference points. So just to make it easier for the building inspector, if the applicant says that we're gonna store this volume of material and it's gonna have a maximum height of X, then you incorporate that into the resolution, then the building inspector very easily can tell if they have more material than they were approved for.
Yeah, I was thinking also, it sounds like this contractor yard would probably run its course before you actually issued any COs.
I don't know how the applicant structures this or how they anticipate.
I mean,
doing
the
it.
other thing I was thinking is there any visual impact. I'm sure you don't want to ugly the place up while you're trying to sell it, but.
So there's a balancing that goes on here with that kind of a question, right? So again, we don't want to haul material off, we don't want to put it in a place where we can't get to it and reuse it. So there may be some material left over when we go to close out one of the phases. I think the builder and all involved are going to want to make sure that it's properly screened so that as they try to sell those places, that won't be an obstruction. But this is not a finite operation. This is kind of a fluid operation. So I think giving the flexibility for the builder to be able to manage this site, even at the point where there might be COs issued in West Terrace, I think is the flexibility that they'll need, to be honest with you.
My point was basically just about the visual impact as you're driving by on Quail Road, I believe it's called,
There may
It
be.
seems like it's set back quite a bit. I have no idea what the elevation of that lot is compared to the surrounding terrain.
Plus the intent is not to have a pile just sit here, right? So if they get to that point and all that material's been used, then you basically have a flat site that you started with.
Any comments from our local reporter? Any questions? Okay. So with that, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We'll have the Tuxedo Farms folks back when the regular agenda gets to their point, to give us an idea of where the project is going for the balance of 2023. And I think you can start to talk about the new relationship with Lennar and Related. I'd like a little summary of that also, if you could. Okay.
Later tonight.
Yeah, well, that'll be right after the approval of the minutes, so it'll be 2 minutes from now. So we'll start the regular meeting. Does anybody have any questions on our minutes from the August 1st meeting?
None for me.
Nope.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Now we're
I'm
back
sorry,
to,
John, who seconded?
I did.
Okay,
Susan,
thanks.
brief.
and now we're back to Tuxedo Farms. If you could give us a summary of where we're going from here.
Yep.
And how that CFG permit, which hopefully we can approve in October, how that fits into the next 3 to 4 months.
So that will fit in hopefully seamlessly, because what we want to do is come back later this month with a submission for site work, both in Quail Road and the Commons. So that type of horizontal infrastructure work, again, nothing vertical yet in the Commons, we don't have approval for that, but that horizontal site work will be facilitated by this clearing and grading filling permit. So we will get the permit in October, let's say, then we come to you, your board, with drawings for the Quail Road and Common site work that hopefully then gets approved later in the fall. I understand Sean's comment, we'll have the permit issued, so it coincides with the start of construction, which again, we're hoping to take place later fourth quarter of this year. And then in terms of vertical development, the goal is to come in October, an October submission for the first West Terrace application. And that will be for vertical construction within West Terrace.
And that would be probably for our November meeting.
For the November meeting, and hopefully back in December as well for continued review, and that will take us through the end of this calendar year. So this year, this grading permit, Quail Road, Common site work, and then the latter part of the year, begin West Terrace.
Anybody have any questions about any of that?
Not much to chew into.
Makes sense.
And now the new
So
relationship.
Stephen
Okay.
Dahl from Lennar is here, and I'll have Stephen introduce himself and the relationship.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, professionals, Mr. English. I'm Steve Dahl. I'm a manager and in-house counsel with Lennar. But like Chuck, I'm sort of subbing. You know, I think the name and face that many of you may be more familiar with is Mitch Newman. You know, certainly know Mr. English has had a fair amount of interaction. He was at the meeting that we had earlier in the month. Unfortunately, he's ill. He's got COVID, I'm sure he'll have a quick recovery. But going forward, I think. When was the last time you saw him? I'm sorry?
10 days ago.
At least a week, and I think I've had all my shots. But I think going forward, Mitch will be the main spokesperson, and he'll, be attending these future meetings. But for now, just as an update, and as some of you may know, for going back more than a year and a half, we have been working with Related to assist them and give them some direction as to some of the issues related to the special permit and the other documents related to that permit. And at this point now, we are under contract with Related to purchase the entire property. We expect to close on the entire property by the end of this month. In time, once you all perfect the subdivision of the Commons, Lennar will convey the Commons section back to Related. Lennar will be responsible for all the site development work, including the site development related to the Commons. But Related will then go with the vertical construction of the rental apartments and the retail commercial that's related to the Commons section. Lennar will then proceed with all of the for sale residential construction, the townhomes, the single family homes in the various neighborhoods. So So that's the game plan right now, and we expect to own the entire property by the end of the month, as Brad indicated, then proceed with that schedule of approvals for the various neighborhoods.
Do you know at this point whether you will be the builder for the commons?
We will be the
You're
builder,
gonna build
yes.
there also,
Yes.
but they will lease the
Right,
facilities.
so they will build and lease the common section, and they'll also be responsible for leasing out the retail area of the commons. So that will be their responsibility going forward. And again, Lennar will then build and sell the rest of the homes.
So Lennar's not the builder for Commons.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
That's what
I
But you're
misunderstood.
not building.
No.
We are not building the commons, we're doing the site work. We're doing the site work, but the vertical construction will be done by Related.
So Greg and Dylan, we expect to be back here before your board with all of us sometime first quarter next year, and we're ready to go vertical.
Would they not entertain Lennar as the potential builder for bids? Or is that an inappropriate question at this point?
I guess it's probably more in their wheelhouse to do rental.
No, the building of it, I'm asking.
Actually,
The
building
cons-
of
The
it,
construction.
it's not something that we've discussed, I think at this point, again, it's Related's intent to do the building of the commons. And then the leasing and maintenance and ownership of those buildings.
Does anybody have any questions on this?
Having multiple builders, contractors, does that pose a problem?
Not on a project of this magnitude. That happens often. In these kind of large-scale projects, you do have different entities responsible for different building
This
passages.
is not a small project, this is a pretty big
No,
one.
he said it's not, since it's
That's
not
what
a
I'm saying.
small.
Okay.
So for a project this size, it's quite customary.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of subs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't wanna have one venue saying, no, I don't need you going over here, like that kind of conflicts. Okay.
So for the purposes of this board, Lennar will be presenting and making submissions for everything going forward outside of the commons. all the
Outside of
way.
the commons, yes, so we will be the applicant.
Right, and for the supervisor's benefit, and Representative Talbot members here tonight, the special permit requires us to notice the town as to the transfer. So on the day of closing, we will be providing that written notice to the town, advising the town, and our stepping into the shoes of Related, assuming all obligations under the special permit. And when Lennar ultimately conveys back the commons so that Related can develop the commons portion, that also will be all upon due notice to the town. So the applicant entities will be crystal clear.
But the site plan approval would be managed by Lennar, no?
Correct.
Yes.
The ARB items would be managed by Related.
Only with respect to the
For
commons.
the comments, yeah, right.
So like the first set of approvals that we're gonna be looking for later this year, early next, with respect to Quail Road, the common site work, as well as West Terrace, those approvals would all be in Lennar's name, the applicant would all be the Lennar entity. It's technically US Home Builders, right, LLC.
Say that again, Brian?
The Lennar entity would be the applicant, US.
Well, the corporate of the company entity is US Home LLC. We do business as Lennar. So often you'll see contracts in the name of Lennar, but it's the same company.
Us lawyers like to make things complicated, but we'll specify it in the resolution so that it's clear.
So I just want to be clear, I understand. The commons will not be owned by Related, but you will be the agent to lease.
No, it will be owned, because there's not a current subdivision that, for the common section, in Lennar's initial acquisition, we'll take the whole property. When that subdivision is perfected and filed, then Lennar will convey back to Related the commons section,
Okay.
And only the commons.
and only the
Okay.
common section.
Right, Lennar's in the business of the single-family for sale.
Yeah.
That's the division of labor, and just to relate to the help in real estate transactional component component of all is it's easier, given the current subdivision status for Lennar to acquire the entire property now and convey back just that portion to related sometime next year.
So the rental properties remain with related?
At the end of the day, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
They will handle the leasing
correct.
Yes,
of the commons.
yes,
Well, the
Because they
commons
own it.
and the rental apartments.
yes.
That's also considered part of the commons,
Correct,
right?
the rental apartments and the retail.
And the retail
The
and
retail,
retail.
absolutely.
If I remember right, there was a small number of potential rental properties outside of the commons, you know? That might have been, not a co-op, but,
Condominium?
yeah, I thought there was holding on to some potential for condominiums outside of, or even rentals outside of the,
I'll double check that.
yeah, just if that's the similar arrangement in that area.
And the other, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a concern, but areas of my responsibility have to do with Tuxedo Farms LDC and the Tuxedo LDC. So conversations with the town regarding how that plays out and would be helpful. But obviously, that's not a planning board issue.
Okay, if there's nothing else for Tuxedo Farms, thank you, gentlemen.
Could I have a motion to authorize the drafting of a resolution, please?
Okay, I'll make a motion to that effect. A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you all, see you next
Thank
month.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, next item is Skyview Skylights, and tonight will be a review of the architectural landscaping issues related to that project. So whoever wants to start off.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members, Deb, Val, Sean, Kelly, and Mr. Supervisor. I'm Daniel Kraushaar. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Skyview Skylights, also known as 655 Sterling Mine Road. And my office is located at 300 Airport Executive Park, Suite 307, Nanuet, New York, 91154. As the chairman mentioned, we're on for ARB review pursuant to Tuxedo's town code. On August 1st, we were granted conditional approval for both the required special permit and the amended site plan. I also mentioned at the last meeting that we hired a new architect, and I'm happy to be able to say that I was right. We hired a new architect. Kelly, I believe you've dealt with this firm as well. They're excellent.
Good.
Anderson Design Group. And we're bringing our own Sean with us. He's going to be handling that aspect of explanation. We do have new drawings and renderings. Then it'll be up to you, Mr. Chairman, the order, but I'd like Abigail to talk about the changes that we've made based on all the comments from the various town professionals and the public and the board members as well. And Ken, I'd like you to at least cover what we've done since August 1st, like in terms of making progress with the various county agencies, Department of Health, Highway Department, and also New York State DEC. So we have, I think, very good news on all those fronts. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Sean O'Connell from the Anderson Design Group to speak about the architectural elements of
I think a wider span might work.
Bigger base, yeah. There you go.
Much
That's engineering, not art.
Yes. All right, so like Daniel mentioned, my name is Sean O'Connell. I'm from Anderson Design Group. We're representing this project from the architectural firm 655 Sterling Mine Road. Just to start off on the overall site plan, this is just under 5 acres, and we're going to be proposing approximately 50,000 square foot building. There is currently an existing building there that we will be removing in place of this building. The main use of this building would be as an assembly for skylights and windows in the rear, and the front portion would be for and the main portion would be for a showroom, along with offices, conference rooms, things that go of that nature. So it kind of serves as the dual purpose here. Next one. This is where we're going to be stitching. This is the current existing building on the site. You can see the angle of the road and the perspective that we're coming from. These are the existing pictures of this site as of 1 month ago. And as you'll see next, these pictures will be exactly stitched with our 3D model, positioned using GIS systems that'll perfectly locate the model to scale within the terrain and site. So all the trees that you see, all the landscape and terrain that you see is from those pictures, but just with our 3D model within it. So these three are the same renderings, but with different landscapes at different time periods. First one that we have here is landscaping at a 1-year time frame, so essentially the first year of putting the vegetation in, and then 5-year and 10-year. And you can see the landscape in the front and evergreens towards the side and rear getting larger and covering more of the streetscape.
Sean, can you put that on the table closer?
Yeah.
Just gonna get up.
There you go. So the main massing of the building is rectangular in nature. We tried to move a little bit away from a more modern sense of the building into a more traditional or classical in the sense of that rectangular shape and breaking up a stripped glass facade. We use a lot of natural colors to do this. So we used the natural stone and slate and wood colors that are within the area, mostly slate. And so our precast panels that would be along the side would be a gray bluish to match a slate rocky color. We do have aluminum facade as this terrace to break up the facade, and that will bring out the wood color. So it would be
When you say terrace, you're talking about the living wall or?
yes, the terrace, yeah, exactly. And the terraced wall would be the green wall itself, which would have its own vegetation within the wall growing. We can get into that in a little bit more detail, but that's interesting. Interesting rivets within the wall that will hold its own vegetation. They grow to about maybe a foot or so, but depending on the vegetation that you use, how you want to fill it up. You can kind of control the design of your green wall as well. That is mainly from this perspective. And again, just to mention the stitching of the project. This building, when we build it within our 3D model, it's to scale, and we're allowed to place this on a GPS in a certain location that will automatically bring in the terrain and vegetation and mix it with our pictures. So this background that you see is a real picture, the sky is real, everything about this is real. And we're able to stitch in our 3D model, place it in exactly to the scale that it would be, just so that there's no mistakes in perspectives or panorama that might adjust that perspective.
You mentioned stone wood. That tan material toward the center of the building, what is that?
So that is aluminum that is of an oak color. It's an aluminum facade that's striped along, but yes, that's going to be the resource for that. It's an oak color, and we're trying to do that to use those more neutral tones, to not have it as contemporary, a little bit more traditional and natural.
And blends in with the, yeah.
Exactly. And obviously, we could use wood, but maintenance for wood in that kind of situation, expansion
This is nice stuff.
not as feasible.
I'm gonna pass it the other way.
Does this show the image of where the neighbor's house is located?
Great point, yes. So because this is a real image, we're not able to actually see that existing neighbor's house, but you can see an outline in this corner. It's very hard to see, I'm sorry. But we dash an outline in there so that you know that as per the existing conditions, the existing building, we cannot see them and they would not be able to see us.
And that's at all times of the year?
This is for the spring, fall, and summer, but we are also looking to do evergreens along this edge, so when it does come to winter, we can cover that up as much as possible.
And the silvery material on the end of the building, that's glass?
Yes, so this is going to be a glass facade. We are specifically using, you can have that in the glass itself. So this is some examples that we have. The glass is very specific. It's low reflecting glass. And so any car that might come by that might have strong headlights, or it won't reflect the light nearly as much. These are very high-end windows, and the stainless steel there would be the framing that we'd be using for the windows as well.
So it won't be this dark frame, it'll be that silvery frame?
Correct, yeah.
What about the sun? That same rule applies for the sun?
So it would for the sun too, but this is actually facing the north side. So the sun would be coming from the opposite side. We do have east over here and west over here. So it would be getting some morning and afternoon sun. That would be somewhat direct. But we're also proposing a fairly large overhang that would help with energy efficiencies for any of the sun that might get in the mornings or afternoons.
And I was only more concerned about glare. So when people travel, get my directions right, west,
Yes.
they don't get blinded by the sun.
Yes, so, yeah, since we would have the direct light coming from the south underneath it, and it is going east-west, match that with the low reflectance light, glass, you would not get glare. You would get very minimal glare, especially in comparison to the average window that you would use for reflectance.
Is there a functional purpose for the glass there? I mean, what would be behind
Yes.
that? The showroom,
Exactly.
workspace? or-
Yep, so the vast majority of it would be showroom. The secondary purpose of that would be any sort of offices or conference rooms that would be ancillary to that
Be like
space.
on a mezzanine above the showroom?
Exactly, yes.
I'm sorry, finish. On the glass, are both pieces Starfire or just the one side?
Sorry, if they are Starfire?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I just know the specific reflectance ratio number that they give is beyond the typical standard for windows.
Yeah, The label on it has Starfire on one side and another kind of glass, which I don't know what is on the other side.
I have to check that for you.
Well, the Starfire is likely the exterior side,
Yeah.
and the other side is the interior.
I would think, yeah.
So it wouldn't affect the outside.
We'd have to look into that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And so to go on to another perspective, this would be essentially the same property here, but from the opposite perspective. I can also show you this section down below, because it will make it a little bit more obvious that for the building height. So you can see right here is where the proposed road is, and this is our proposed building. If this hill slowly angles up on the opposite side, we will be going no more than 45 feet. If we do decide to do anything on the roof, which we're in talks of, and we're not sure yet, but if we do decide to place anything on the roof, it would still be below the 45 feet. And so from this perspective here, we have the same renderings, but from that angle. And this would be a little bit of a better perspective. You can see the glass being broken up with the aluminum facade. And again, it's the same as below, which this is the vegetation at 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years, and you can see the vegetation below. And we'll get into it a little bit more when we do go over the landscape design, but a lot of the existing conditions for the vegetation remain the same. We would just mostly be adding to it. We can talk about the floor plan. As I mentioned before, the main purpose of this is assembly to make the skylights and windows. And that would be the majority of the space in the rear. And the front, as you can see, this portion with the smaller rooms, these would be the showrooms and the lobbies and the offices with the glass. The whole front is essentially curtain walls with aluminum cladding over it for a sunshade. But the rear, where the main assembly of the windows would be, is most likely going to be precast concrete walls that are insulative and great for sound as well. But we are also talking about pre-engineered metal insulated siding as well.
That front portion is 2 stories, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I can show you here too. Here you can see the upper floor. That this main portion, the warehouse assembly portion, is open to below, double height, and this front windowed portion would have offices and conference rooms above on the mezzanine. And so these ones would be a little bit easier to see. These are the renderings at a much larger scale. So we have the overhang that we were discussing before. We have the windows here being broken up by the aluminum facade. And then in the rear, you can kind of see here the grayish, bluish slate color of the engineered walls.
Quick question.
Yes.
If you do anything on the roof, will you set it back far enough so that from this angle it doesn't really show?
Exactly.
Right.
So if we ever do decide to put anything on the roof, which we're still in talks of doing, we do have other options, but if we do decide, it would still stay below 45 and never be seen from the street. And last one, I'm not sure if you had any more materials, maybe the paint materials, but this is just going over the natural and neutral colors that we've selected to try to keep a more classical feel. So staying in the gray bluish range, as in the rocky slate stone that's nearby, and the dark fir oak color that we have for the aluminum. And you can see we did hand out stainless steel frames that would be for the frame windows.
So regardless of the three sides being precast concrete or metal, it'll be the same color.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yeah, for the most part, it'll be in the same grayscale realm. Yes.
We have this, with those two materials. You sit those on.
And I would say too, just to add on to it, all the materials that we've chosen, we have chosen in a way that they have at least a 30-year minimum warranty. So we're using specific materials. Sometimes you can get roofing and siding that might be 10 or 15 years. The examples that we've shown you were at least a 30-year warranty. We're looking to have this as low maintenance and high-end as possible.
Do you have any elevations for the east and the south side?
Yes. So these are the elevations that will also show the grading. As you can see, the front with the windows and the aluminum cladding, but the rear would essentially, we're showing it currently as the 12-foot precast panels. It's what works best for us that we've used plenty of times in the past. It works really well for these kinds of situations because it's so thick and has insulative material within it that keeps the noise really down, especially if there might be the assembly on the inside. And like I mentioned before, this would stay with that monotone bluish grayish color. And the greens represent the green walls that we have, the vegetative walls.
On the precast panels, concrete, I assume?
Yes.
Would there be any windows above the 12-foot panels?
There will, and those will specifically be for the warehouses. It'll help keep and facing south, so it'll help with heat control and lighting and keep a higher energy efficiency for that warehouse side.
And that would be the south where you do have light concerns.
Correct.
And is the same type of glass, anti-reflection, or?
These would be a different type of glass, but they would be in the rear, south-facing. It wouldn't be visible from the front. And it would be a specific kind of glass that we'd use because it would be more of a clear story. So we would want specific light to come in and a solar heat gain coefficient of a certain percentage that would be different than the front.
Thank you.
So it's a little prettier, so it's
And part of the concern of reflection is also, the Sterling Forest is a big flyway for migrating birds. Of course, anything that can thwart birds from crashing into windows is a good thing.
I understand that, yeah. That is something that we can definitely do.
No. On top of it, we took away 2/3 of the glass from the last measurement.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that was part of, we didn't want to have too much of a pure modern look, and so breaking that glass up gave it a little bit more of a traditional look instead of having a clear monotone glass. But that's,
And if there's no more questions on this, we can move along to the landscaping.
Excuse me, John.
Yes,
Can I ask a couple of questions?
a couple.
I'll be limited.
Okay.
The current structure that's there is about 375 feet from my property line. You guys stated that I'm not going to see this building from my property.
absolutely not during
I can see
spring,
it.
summer, fall.
I can see that current building from my property right now. What is the distance that this building is going to be from my property line to where the building starts on the east side?
I believe I do have that dimension, but that would be most likely on the civil plans.
Because if I could see it now, I mean, I understand there's leaves and stuff like that, leaves go 6 months a year, but, you know, May they're full bloom, November they're gone. So,
We can get into it also a little bit more active after the civil, but the landscape design too, we could also show that we are proposing some evergreens along that side as well to help, but we can.
Kevin, as I think you know, the site plan has been approved, so the building is what it is, size-wise,
I
location-wise.
understand that, John, I just,
Okay.
on that east side, is there gonna be just a facade, or is there gonna be glass on the east side of that building?
It may wrap around a little bit, but for the most part, I'd say 90% of it would be the concrete facade.
Because we don't wanna, you know, end up with glare coming towards my property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, from morning until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's also part of the reason why we are trying to spec the highest grade of low reflectance.
Yeah, and this will help.
Yes.
That's on that facade. It'll quiet the building down.
Yeah, I understand the facade part, I was concerned with glass being on that side. And we, you know, naturally, everything's been approved, but, you know, you had said that you're not gonna see it from my house, so that's not true.
Okay, that's a couple of questions.
Okay, why don't we move on to the landscaping?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect, owner of A2 Land Consulting out of New Fairfield, Connecticut. From the last presentation that I gave, I think everybody's heard and seen my landscape presentation. We don't have any changes really from the last time we presented, but some of the highlights from the original were the fact that on the east side, we have retained a 10-foot wide buffer here where no existing vegetation will be removed. We have a very significant landscape buffer of evergreen trees and deciduous trees in this area, this northeastern corner. But along this eastern end, we have a significant evergreen buffer, a very robust streetscape planting here that wraps along above the retaining wall. We have, and then along here, along Sterling Line Road, and then we have our grass paves in this area to the west with a buffer of no-mow mix, and then a small narrow wetlands buffer planting with native plants in this area. Scooted the building forward a little bit. We have more room behind the back of the building. There's going to be access around the building for maintenance here, again, using the grass paved material. And then this area here would be planted with the no-mow mix. That would be mown just once a year for annual maintenance. And then the steep slopes here would be planted with erosion control or roadside matrix mix that has wildflowers, grasses, and even shrub seeds in it, so that we have some natural succession coming up in this area. Eventually, trees will grow in that area as well. But overall, as I had mentioned in the last meeting, we're proposing 26 canopy trees, 31 evergreen trees, 155 shrubs, and about 580 perennials and ornamental grasses in this very robust four-season interest planting plan that we've developed. We did today, well, I received it today, I think, the memorandum from NPV. There's a couple of items. The first two items were related to the grass creek areas and asking specifically whether there's going to be daily parking. I think from the start, minimal parking in these areas. We're just trying to keep as much grass creek, but as operations continue and things grow, these areas will be parked on. We're just really trying to reduce the amount of pavement that's happening on this project site. And then the second related to that was whether we're using the general seed mix. It was the intent to use the general seed mix on that. I'm happy to relook at that, and we will get more specific on the plans exactly which seed mix or sod we will be using for that area, so that is the most appropriate to use. The remainder of the notes were just some comments regarding some of our notes and just a little bit of clarification. I see no issues with any of those comments, and we're very happy to look at those and make those changes and clarify some of the notes on our plans related to that. So I wanted to be brief because I know we presented this a few times, but I'm happy to go over any specific area that anyone would like to talk about.
Before I get to the board comments, Valerie, do you think that addressed your?
Yeah, yes, I would just recommend, if it's possible, to have, like, ask the applicant to just kind of, you know, in any sort of resolution, just follow up with and complete the outstanding comments, and I think those can be easily amended afterwards.
Okay.
If I could throw something out there.
That was actually a condition in the prior resolution that you granted to comply with Valerie's memo. So the plans, this is like an after-the-fact kind of presentation, additional detailed presentation for you, but those plans have already been approved, subject to her changes.
The one thing I wanted to throw out there is if, let's, for example, say, we try the grass, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And we want to switch it to something else. That does work.
I think that would need to come back to the planning
Yeah, so
board.
let's just talk about it. Right, so the grass pave was there for a couple of different reasons, right? You needed structural strength, you wanted to, architecturally, you wanted to cut down on paving, you know, the visibility, and also for stormwater, you wanted to reduce your lot coverage, development coverage on the lot, okay? So if there was, let's just say, several feet that they were modifying, my suggestion would be to address it as a field change, which is under your code. It's a process where the engineer can make a change. I would review the merits of the change, make sure it's within the spirit and intent of your approval, and that's language right out of your code. And I'd circulate a letter to the board to give you the opportunity to say, well, no, we don't think it is, and they should come back in. If they are wholesaling eliminating it, I think it absolutely would be a modification of the site plan. I would not be comfortable doing that as a field change because I don't think it is within the spirit of intent of your approval. So at that point, it would have to come back to you for amended site plan approval.
I agree, I have no objection.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The amount of things other than actual evergreen and deciduous, does that include the living wall, or is that
That does
separate?
not include the
Okay.
living wall. Yeah, that hasn't been fully designed at this point since there were changes being made to the architecture, but no, we've not.
Okay.
So hundreds of plants on the living wall.
Okay, because I was gonna say it didn't sound like enough for
No,
both
no,
those
no,
pieces.
no.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Bill?
Quick question. That grass creek or whatever it is area doesn't get plowed or does get plowed? Neither does snow.
Oh, for
But
snow.
during the
Well, not
snow,
snow on the ground.
it will get plowed, there's gonna have to be, you know, they're gonna have
A little
to
higher
lift up.
plow.
Yeah.
And so where is the snow gonna get accumulated on this plan?
My guess is, you know, we've got this whole area of no mow next, which is
Toward
good
the
because-
wetlands?
Yeah, so some of the wetlands are back here, so we still have some buffer between here, but some will go onto the no mow. We can get some back here, and then you've got this whole large area up in the front, and then of course, if there's any excess, like most commercial industrial properties, they just take it off if there's nowhere to put it. I do think we have some kind of hold room here to get some snow.
Yeah, this just makes a big difference in ratio of storage area to plowed area if that gets
Sure.
plowed.
Sure, if all the parking spaces aren't needed, the snow can
Yeah.
sit in these areas.
Mr. Chairman, can I just comment quickly on that? So the grass pave around the rear, that was added for fire department access. That would definitely need to be plowed.
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
If it wasn't plowed, it would be administered through enforcement action by your building inspector.
Thank you for the reminder.
I did see on one of the plans where it said snow storage, right? Yeah,
On the site.
Yeah.
yeah, I saw it.
I might have that on this.
Good, Bill. Anything else? Bill?
The only question I have really is about the living wall. Whose department is that? Is that?
Yeah, that would probably be more
Okay.
our end, yes.
I don't know much about them, but in the wintertime, you know, are the plantings chosen to be green all year round? And
Generally, yes. Generally, they try to be perennial grasses to be as green all year round. but it can depend on your choices. So I guess the short answer is yes or no, but I guess from our perspective, it would most likely be a yes, green all year round.
Okay. And then what kind of maintenance is involved in keeping it?
It also depends on the system of the green wall that you use. There's many different types of systems. For the most part, there is some maintenance, absolutely, but there'll be a water system set up that automatically filters and provides fertilization for them in an automatic hookup. So you will have to somewhat be on top of it, but there is a system set up that waters it and filters it.
Okay.
Kind of a hydroponic situation?
Very similar.
Basically.
Okay, thank you.
Ned?
Oh, that was one of my questions. Yes.
Let me ask a couple of things for the resolution, Kelly. Since we don't know metallic panels versus concrete, it can be an either-or situation, or does that have to be pinned down?
If the board is comfortable with either or, you can certainly do that. I'm trying to pull up their plans to see specifically what they listed. They listed their color palette on page 5. So they have the Coventry gray, smooth precast concrete, and then the gray shower trim and doors. Is there a different gray that they're now considering?
Sorry, the multiple grays that we had were the storefront aluminum, and we were also kind of defining that blue there was also part of that gray scale for the siding.
The darker one would be the siding.
Yes, well, both of them could potentially be siding. It's just to stay within that gray scale of local stone between slate and rock.
So then the ones that are shown on your sheet, A901PB, those are not the materials being used?
Oh, these are the colors that we are proposing on the table. Yes, that's the gray shower there, the slate stone, the gray, and the aluminum panel as an oak or a fir.
Okay, so are you using, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood, are you using another one or just those 3?
It's just those 3. The
Okay.
only other siding would essentially be the glass that we passed around and the stainless steel as the frame for the glass.
Okay.
But it could be metal or concrete. They haven't
Uh-huh.
decided that yet.
Yeah, for the warehouse siding
The
around.
three,
Okay,
the
I
three,
got you.
the three sides. The
Right.
three sides.
Okay. That can certainly be added, I just need to have that information as to the colors, et cetera. And then I can put that in and say either or as a condition. I would have to craft the exact language when I get that, but
We can,
if you understand. what
we
it
can
is.
give you these, Kelly. These are the colors.
Yeah, I believe they have the RGB identification numbers on them too.
Yeah, 212,530.
Yeah, those 2 are the ones that are up there, so I have those.
Perfect.
We can give those to Kelly. And then my other question is, can we require that anything to be placed on the roof would be in an enclosed penthouse?
So, as long as that doesn't exceed
The 45,
the
which
45 feet,
they've already said that if they put something on the roof, it will not exceed 45 feet. So that seems to be covered.
do you want to see what it looks like, and will the building be designed to carry that load if there's an additional weight on there for?
A penthouse wouldn't be that, just the enclosure wouldn't be that heavy. It would be the equipment that would be, fans, motors. The
There's a
ventilation
fairly-
system, I think, is the only thing you would put up there.
Yeah, and there's a fairly good chance too that would be wall mounted or ground mounted. I just wanted to pose that just so that there was no question of the 45-foot height, because if we did put it up, it would be in the rear of the building where it does slope down, parapets are higher, and you wouldn't be able to see it.
So that you could have it be enclosed in a structure not to exceed the 45 feet.
And has the water tower location been decided? I saw it in
Yes.
what looked like 2 different places.
Yes, so this is a little bit of an easier reference over here. So we were gonna have the water tower over here. It would be painted in the same color as the aluminum cladding that we had which was a wood ground color. Yeah, and it would be, we have some of the vegetation around it is shown. But I believe it was 10,000 gallons.
I have a question, John, you're saying that if they put like an air conditioning unit, an HVAC system up there, you want that enclosed? I don't know if that can be done.
No, there would be louvers
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
side of it. That can be done. That's done
Okay.
all the time.
Yeah, it's not fully enclosed, but it would have a louver system to still get the.
Doesn't
the
need a
amount of
top.
air. Correct.
Yeah, it would be a simple envelope.
At what point will the landscaping for the evergreens get past evergreens to more specific species?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
No, I can go ahead with that. We have the planting plan on one of our sheets that has the whole plant schedule that lists what they are. We have white fir, balsam fir, white spruce, Colorado spruce, and green giant are the evergreens that we have in the buffer planting here. We didn't want to do just a wall of one particular species. We wanted to mix it up throughout here. And, the green giant install height is 7 to 8 because they're very, very fast growing. The other evergreens install height is 10 to 12 feet.
Is that just a colored version of the 720 plans that were reviewed and approved, or is there any change? Because if there's a change, that changes things. I don't want something to be presented that's not.
Let's see here. That's the older one. This was the one that we rendered on, I have the date of 7/11/23. I don't know if I actually updated the plan. This is the presentation that you saw at the last.
Yeah, the
Okay, so
present.
they've been updated to the July 20th. The July 20th plans are the ones that were reviewed and approved. I just wanted to make sure you weren't changing from July 20th back to an older set or
No.
to a new set.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, any changes would need to come back for amended approval. So when the applicant makes a submission for your signature, one of the items that I do, and I'm sure Valerie does the same, is I compare it to what you've approved. And if there's modifications at that point, you can't move forward with the signature, they'd have to come back to you. So I just want that, just everybody on the same page with that.
And you've taken deer resistance into your considerations, I hope. Right, okay. And you have the calipers on your planting plan.
Right, yes, correct. We do have a note that deer resistance is deer resistance.
Right,
We do have a note about having a deer maintenance protocol regardless, because they will eat anything and everything at this point. Not everything, but.
Okay, any other questions from an architectural perspective?
Sean, if you wouldn't just mind explaining to me, I'm understanding that the pitch of the roof comes from north to south, and that could also act like a parapet visual block from any of these potential mechanicals on the roof. Is that part of the idea of that pitch?
Correct, yes. So the high point is in the north, in the front, where the overhang is. And so it'll pitch down towards the back.
How much of an elevation change in the slope would that be, do you know?
At the roof.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, instead of this slope, if it was just a parapet to block, I mean, how much visual blockage does that provide?
In the front, the parapet is only 10 inches, but it'll drop 1/4 of an inch over every foot. I'd say maybe it's 200 feet. So
basically what I'm thinking, if there was a mechanical, say 3 feet high.
Yeah.
Is it providing 3 feet of transition to where that mechanical would be placed?
Yes, so we did the calculations, essentially, as soon as you go halfway back onto the building line, any mechanicals that you would place on the roof then would be hidden from the front perspective.
And not exceed.
And not exceed 45.
I did have one other question regarding the dumpsters or the trash.
Yes, so, we're showing it a little bit easier on this, it's over near the water tower in the corner. It'll be easy access here, you wouldn't have to deal with any of the parking along these sides, and you would have very close direct access.
And covered or mean, surrounded or?
Well, it is surrounded currently by vegetation. Although if we
The
did
front
want-
facing you'll see though,
Yes.
Yes.
because I have to get the truck in there.
Right. Okay.
I just want to make one correction to what I said, going back to the ZBA's decision. Mechanicals cannot be placed on the roof. I apologize, I forgot about that.
Oh, you're right.
So,
Okay. Still not a,
So that takes
not as
care
much
of,
of a problem.
takes care of that.
We do have
Done.
other ideas of wall mounts and floor mounts, so we can go towards that direction.
Thanks, Kelly.
yeah, sorry about that. I could have cut that about 10 minutes shorter, but.
Okay, I think, I'll make a motion for Kelly to prepare a conditional resolution.
So I sent you a draft resolution, didn't I? No? Oh,
No.
good news. I prepared one.
Really? You sure? We didn't get that, did we?
No, I don't think you did.
No, okay.
It was basically your resolution from last time. The conditions that I took out remained in. So you don't have it tonight. You can certainly have it for your next meeting if you'd like to look at it first.
But it really covers what we've,
It has all of the same conditions. I will now take out the roof equipment part. The only one that's not crafted is the either or gray color. The first one is that no building permit can be issued that isn't consistent with the plans. Prior to signing of the plans, comply with both Sean and Valerie's memos. Comply with all the mitigation measures in the neg deck. Comply with all of the conditions in the ZBA decision, which is A through K. It continues with the tree clearing limitation that you had in your prior resolution. All plantings, including the proposed living wall, they have to be maintained in a healthy, vibrant condition. And the applicant shall be required to evaluate the soils supporting the grass-paved fire apparatus access road to the satisfaction of the building inspector in consultation with the town engineer.
and you can incorporate the specific colors into that.
Yes, so they put them on the plan, but rather than just reference the plan, I will include them as a specific condition that has to be built for those, but I didn't type that up.
Well, you didn't know that.
Change, yeah. But I will include that as well.
So I think we could make a motion to approve that.
Yes, and just so you know, you did
Everybody's
reaffirm your
comfortable.
negative declaration back in February on their ARB application. Just because the plans changed, it's still the same ARB. You got your local determination on July 14th from the county, and you held the public hearing on August 1st. So you're all set there.
So we can approve that, or
Certainly
vote on it.
can. Yep.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve that conditional resolution.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And just to be clear, that's on the ARB approval.
Yes, this is a specifically labeled Resolution of Conditional Approval Architectural Review Board for Sterling Mine USA LLC.
So unless you make any changes, I believe you are done with us.
Just thinking about going back to the zoning board.
So I,
It's not even a funny joke, Dan. It's
Don't worry. I was kidding.
and just for informational purposes only, you said you're making some progress on the conditions on the previous approval.
Yes.
With the county and so on. If you could just briefly go over that?
Ken. Department of Health, Highway Department, and
Department of Health, we got the approval for the location of the well, and with the construction, we'll have to provide them with the additional information prior to a building permit. Orange County Highway Department, we can make a resubmission to their office, it's under review with respect to their comments.
For the turn lane, among other things.
Right. So those comments do not impact anything with respect to the interior of the site. That's building location, parking locations, that's all the same. It's just really the configuration of the site.
And DEC?
DEC, we have, it's timeframe of 12 months. That's just with respect to the
Okay, thanks, Ken.
So in terms of process, Mr. Chairman, once we get all these conditions met, the next step be? Do you have a CDRC?
You would submit the final version of the revised drawings reflecting those conditions, right?
Yes.
To Sean and Valerie, they would look at it. They tell me, yes, everything is taken care of, and then I can sign off on it.
All right, so we don't get together.
I just will add one thing, just to make it easier for yourself. It's a lot easier if we make a comprehensive submission that addresses everything rather than do it in parts.
Yeah, do it one time. Do it all, and then submit it.
Divide and conquer. We can do 5.
Divide, reunite.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for your cooperation,
I want to thank all.
for your patience, and good luck with your project.
What a
Yes,
beautiful building.
it is.
What
It
a
is.
beautiful,
It's
beautiful.
gonna be
Really nice.
Yeah.
so much better than what's there.
I told you from day one that
Oh, to see it.
Very exciting.
Yeah, we'll keep 2 of these.
Okay, sounds good.
make this a positive impact
Thank you.
on the town. And I think we will all see that we kept our promise.
Looks gorgeous. Really beautiful.
Just a little bit better looking than what you're gonna take down.
Just a little, I think.
Okay,
Do
thanks.
you have
Thank
a
you.
date for the removal of the old building? Do you have a projected date to remove the old building?
Trying to see. I think we would need to get
You need a demo.
this
permit.
site
Yeah.
plan signed.
No, that's incorrect. The chairman is right. You can pull a demo permit anytime.
Right.
It's not, the board didn't approve the demolition of the building.
But I think the building inspector will not issue the demo permit until you prove that there's no asbestos, no lead paint.
I don't know how to do it when everything comes together.
But you deal directly with Chris, you don't have to come to us, to the building inspector.
It's too new for our building.
Okay,
Motion adjourned?
No,
no,
you're not
we
the
got
only
others, we got others.
But thanks for coming.
You can stay if you want to. Let's go.
Good night. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate being on the agenda tonight. Brian Ware with Watchtower. My name's on the August correspondence, the August 29th correspondence, if you have a copy of that. Yeah, I just wanted to provide an update on our progress and our explanation of need that's captured in that letter. We tried to be as comprehensive as possible to make it as understood as possible. I'm sorry I don't have an exhibit tonight. Everybody had these amazing exhibits, and I didn't.
I don't think that's a problem.
We've had exhibits here before, but
I didn't get a chance to bring one. So we kind of have 2 parts to our update. One is our entrance in Ramapo. Obviously, that's of great interest to, the ones here in Tuxedo. So as we mentioned in our correspondence, that is in progress. But we are limited in what we can accomplish because of some conflict with overhead utilities. We're trying to get the facility owners to raise those wires. We have one side done. We need 16 feet clearance for putting in our new entrance because we're going to bring the grade up. It's going to be an increased grade to get up to the hill. So we're waiting on the facility users to finish relocating the telecom. The power is done, that's the top part, but we're waiting on the telecom users to finish the one side. Left side's done, right side we're waiting on. So we're hoping to get that accomplished so we can get that entrance in as soon as possible. I don't have a date for you because it's just hard to get a clear answer out of the utilities when we can get those wires raised. Now, I kind of wanted to give you an update about the overall work on the highway in Ramapo. We didn't get a chance to include that in the letter. So this year, other than that temporary entrance, which basically just comes out to the shoulder, we're not going to be able to get any further work done on the highway. So no work on the highway this year. We just run out of season. But once we get our approvals we need, the schedule is starting next April, April 15. That's when the work in the highway right-of-way begins again. We anticipate extending the existing water and sewer mains up that highway, which is mostly on the westbound side. So if you go way down by, is it below McKinsey? And then, what's the name of the plumbing place? Action. So down by Action is where the sewer main stops. That's as far as the sewer district brought the sewer main. So the sewer main has to be extended up the westbound lane toward Jersey. And then a little ways up above McKinsey is where the Veolia water main stops. So both of those have to be extended up the highway to basically our highway frontage where the Ramapo entrance will be. And then we'll make a turn into our complex, the laterals, into a heated enclosure, and that will feed our complex, the water, the sewer, and everything. So that's all planned for next spring into the summer to get all that work done on the highway. So that's generally what affects the community, what takes place on the site, obviously is ongoing. So as far as tree clearing, that's progressing well, but obviously we're here before you. We're not going to make our September 15 deadline. The tree company works very fast. They could probably have it done by September 15th. We cannot go that fast because of staying within the erosion control requirements by the MS4. So we can only have so much ground opened up. We have to put in silt fence, other measures to limit erosion, and so we can only go so fast. So we're not going to make our September 15 deadline to finish tree clearing, and we don't necessarily have a date on that. We're just working as fast as we can. Those are the first 5 phases of the project, is the tree clearing, and that involves all 113 acres of the complex. So we can only do so many acres at a time. So once the 5 phases are done for tree clearing, then we start phase 6, which would be the excavation on the site. So we anticipate that being later this year, where we start doing more of the site excavation later in the year. So that leaves us with asking about our deadline. So we had put a note in there in our August 29th letter. If it pleases the board, we wanted to find out how you felt about extending the use of that entrance indefinitely. I know we had one deadline, we needed to extend it, we're up against another deadline. The reason we're asking that is because we talked about it and we feel like having that entrance operational would benefit Tuxedo. So if you think about it, we provided some reasons. Without the use of that entrance, the Tuxedo entrance, all the traffic, all the trucks would be using the Ramapo entrance under no restrictions. So we can't control which direction they come in and out of the Ramapo entrance. Next year will be a very, very busy year in that right-of-way. There will be some lane closures, there will be trucks using that entrance. They can go any direction. So we were trying to look ahead and what would really protect the town and be of benefit to the entire community, Tuxedo, Ramapo, that having a turn lane, having trucks continue to use the Tuxedo entrance would reduce traffic. So that was one thing we wanted to mention. There are times when we might need to close the Ramapo entrance. Could be anything. We're putting in our paved main entrance, service interruptions. Obviously, we try to keep it open as much as possible, but so that's the possibility. And if we're unable to have use of the Tuxedo entrance, what would be our recourse? Who would we call? How much trouble, challenge would it be to have us use that entrance for, whether it's a day, a week, or something? So we were concerned about a roadblock there. A couple other things we mentioned in there is we had put a note that our neighbors are currently using our entrance for construction. They're accessing their properties in Ramapo, and we understand that's their only way in and out, but they're using the Sterlington Road realignment for their trucks, their purposes, without any restrictions at all. So we looked at it and said, well, Watchtower has invested a great deal in this intersection to make it safe for the community. Proper sight lines. For us, it just seemed odd that for us not to be able to use it and other property owners on that road to be able to use it just didn't seem to fit. There seems to be something missing there in our when we were looking at it that way. So we felt like that would be reasonable when you look at the comparison of other property users, property owners, users of that intersection. And also, if you think about, we've been using it currently under the current restrictions, and to our knowledge, there hasn't been any complaints. And if there are some, please let us know. Please let us be aware of that. But we thought about whether the project is just starting now, or if it's really busy on that hill and there's a lot going on. The throughput on our entrance, I should say our entrance, the Tuxedo entrance, is not going to change. The 5 trucks an hour limit, 9 to 3, only Monday through Friday, that's not going to change. So that's like a control factor, a funnel, that capacity is going to stay the same, that limit. So we kind of looked at it and went like, well, if it's working now, would the board be pleased or to consider just letting us continue to use that? It would be revocable if there's any complaints or if there's concerns. So we started really thinking about it, and it's a lot of work to come back to the board, type up resolutions. You know, we're doing the best we can as fast as we can. It's a big project. I think when we get the turn lane in Ramapo, that's going to really help kind of like soften any traffic concerns. So that's our request if it pleases the board. We'd like to.
So I have several questions.
Yeah, sure.
You seem to suggest that on the Ramapo entrance, you're suspending work like toward the end of this year until April. Is that?
We actually cannot work in the right of way. So.
And why is that?
Typically November 15 till April 1, they don't allow open pavement in the right of way because of snow removal and other icing issues. So typically work in the right of way doesn't proceed. To be able to open up the highway, put in utilities, they typically don't like that during the winter. So we don't have our approvals yet either.
Wait, you don't have approvals and?
The water and sewer, we don't have finally approved yet. We're waiting for Rockland Health to finalize the water and sewer review. We have project approval. June 28th, we got site plan approval, June 28th.
Mr. Chairman, I think what you're hearing is that they don't have the permits to do the work. Although they have the time right now to do the work before November 15th, they don't have the permits in hand. By the time they obtain those permits, it's really impractical to commence construction for a short period of time until November 15th. Now, usually the restriction on November 15th, it's not really related to snow removal per se. It's more related to getting asphalt from asphalt plants.
Yes, that's it.
And meeting the state specifications for asphalt placement and things like that. It just becomes a very difficult time of year to predict temperatures and to get consistent materials and to get consistent labor. So usually those jurisdictions disallow unless it's an emergency.
Asphalt plants don't open until March 15th, and they do not allow concrete We checked with the county, they asphalt only. So you can't just place concrete in the highway, so we don't have an option as far as progressing our work in the highway during the winter. Yeah.
And you mentioned the other people that use that entrance. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you did give them permission to use that entrance.
Well, they have an easement.
Right.
They have an
So-
easement. Sterlington Road is an easement for St. Joseph's Care Home, Sister Servants,
And that
the ranch
that
retreat,
new
yeah.
ranch retreat
Yeah.
that's in Ramapo.
Correct.
So we can't do anything about that anyway. I did look at the website for the ranch, and it was an old website. They claimed that they were gonna open this past summer, which I don't think has happened. But they didn't talk about any new construction or any expansion. I'm sure they're gonna renovate, so
Yeah,
I don't think
definitely
the amount of traffic going up there will be that great. But, you know, that's an aside. I don't like the indefinite extension at all. That, to me, seems like a complete blank check, especially since I'm not sure what you would use that entrance for. I mean, theoretically, next year, if we gave you an indefinite extension, there could be hundreds of construction workers entering that way. And I remember, because I live in that neighborhood, when you were building the Long Meadow facility, you know, there were buses parked on Long Meadow Road. There were buses parked on Route 17A to shuttle people back and forth. And I could literally hear those buses from my house. So I'm conscious of that. I kind of had in mind an extension to November 30th. We'll get the opinion of the board in a moment. You would come back or could come back for our November meeting. Tell us where you are. Give us a little more detail as you, what you would want to use that for during the winter and into next spring. And I didn't really hear that tonight, what you would use it for.
Well, it would be used at the same rate it's used now, is our point. If we're using it and we're limited in its use, that wouldn't change. That's the way the town can control the use of the entrance. It
So
would be for miscellaneous trucks, it could be equipment rental, it could be material delivery, it could be any number of, you've seen Home Depot trucks or rental trucks or box trucks. It could be any miscellaneous truck like that.
My final concern about using that, especially during the winter, despite the efforts of the county highway department, and it's a county road, people do have problems getting up that hill in snowy, slippery, icy conditions, and it backs up onto the flat part of Sterling Mine Road. Obviously, people coming down the road in slippery conditions, things could happen. So additional traffic in that area just would exacerbate potential problems. And again, I live there, I've seen this. Now, last winter was very atypical. I don't know if that happened at all last winter, but we can't predict that. So that's another concern that I have about going beyond the November 30th date. That's kind of how I chose that. So with that, let me get the opinions of the rest of the board. Susan?
I just have a question that I think I just need clarification on. I know the, can't cut the trees after November, right? But you can still clear and do work. So once the trees are down, you can, there's no stopgap for the bats and the snakes.
Right, so November 1, the bats are gone, the snakes are in their dens. So November 1, there's no issues with handling the trees.
So
yeah.
you're saying you would be going in and doing the clearing and continuing the remediation, and that's really why you need the entrance?
Well, what we're doing right now is tree clearing. Those are the trees that are already down.
Right, but you're saying it's not gonna be done by September 15th, so
Right. we don't know an end date yet. We're obviously working at the best rate we can.
I believe all the trees are cut.
They are all down, one hundred and
It's just
thirteen
either
acres. Yeah.
chipping them up and keeping that on site or taking them out.
Yeah, we're trying to process on site, but the better qualities are coming off on trucks, yeah.
During the winter, if it's a winter like we had last year, do you envision site work, excavation work?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's 2 feet of snow, you're not gonna be doing anything, I wouldn't think.
We will work through pretty well any kind of weather.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
regardless of,
Yeah, we want to keep the project moving to get it done. So the sooner we get it done, the less overall impact on everybody, yeah. So, with our complex in Warwick there, we worked through the winter, yeah. Got it done in 3.5 years, so.
anything else, Susan?
So if we don't give access to the road, you're saying you likely won't be able to do the clearing after September 15th?
Well, we would use our Ramapo entrance if we can get it installed.
Well, until you
And-
can,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just can't commit on dates. September 15 was very optimistic to finish tree clearing. We're not making that, so.
Oh.
So the question isn't giving them access to the road, it's how often they need to come back for an extension?
Well,
Or
it's good.
both?
Well, it's, if we only gave them, say, till November 30th, they
Right.
would have to come back, explain to us where they are,
Yeah.
what they want to use it for, and we would consider another extension if need be.
Okay. And has each extension been 3 months, basically, or it depends?
No, the extension to September 15th was only a month, from August 15th.
Oh, okay.
That was only a month.
Because if you're, I heard November 30th, so we're in, whatever today is, September 5th.
It's almost 3 months, September,
Almost 3
October,
months.
November.
Okay. No?
The work that you have to do in Ramapo and the right of way, that won't happen until spring. Is that-
Likely in the spring, yeah.
Is that going to make that road 1 lane for the whole time that it takes you to do
There,
that?
there might be a lane closure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be significant traffic congestion there.
Yeah.
And in your letter, you basically said that using the entrance in Tuxedo will help alleviate
Yes.
what's contributing.
Yes, that's our concern is and again, that's a judgment call. If we see challenges with Ramapo entrance, we would use the Tuxedo entrance to help provide a buffer and soften any concerns, because we're very concerned obviously about the community. You know, we live and work here. We want it to be as painless as possible to get our complex in there.
Just so everybody knows, probably for 2 or 3 weeks now, there have been lane closures because they're doing a lot of work at the Ramapo entrance. I don't know if anybody has driven past there.
Drove past there in a fire truck the other day.
And-
Yeah, there is a traffic control company that's helping move people off the shoulder because obviously we're trying to bring our entrance to the shoulder, so,
No, and I
Yeah.
will say, it's been very well done.
yeah, they're doing a good job.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have to stop for 3 or 4 minutes, but they seem to be out of there by 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, they don't stick around too much into rush hour, so.
So, yeah, it's a little bit of a problem for people that are on that road, but it's being handled well, I think.
It's gonna get a lot busier in the spring.
And
Because to bring a 1/4 mile or 1/3 mile of water and sewer mains up the westbound, that's gonna take a little bit of time and work.
what you're basically asking to do is to alleviate 5 trucks an hour from adding to that congestion
Yes,
at the Ramapo entrance. And on days where that entrance has to be closed for work, you'd at least like to get 5 trucks an hour out or in
something,
using the other entrances. So
we have to be able to get into our property.
I think,
Yeah.
given nobody's complained, have we had any complaints? I actually have no objections to your request personally. If there's nobody complaining, you're following the rules, this helps speed up your project. I think it's an admin burden, and I don't see a reason why not to grant it. I don't know if we want to go indefinite, but there, you mentioned there's a way to revoke it. I don't know what that process would be, but if it's a simple process because we start seeing issues, then I'd be okay with indefinite. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Ned?
I don't have any questions, but I agree with the chairperson, with the November 30th.
So what, if I ask, what does that accomplish November 30th? They come back, they ask us, hey, we still need to use that entrance to do work, and then we say no because we're worried about winter?
Well, that's part of it, and
Even though there's gonna be congestion down the road anyway, that still might back up all the way to that entrance? I mean, we're talking hypotheticals without any empirical evidence.
You could, as a suggestion, you could ask the applicant, like, to have November 30th and then have the applicant come back with more details as to, you know, his proposal for the truck entrance, even though I know he's talked about 5, you know, trucks per hour, but like a more detailed proposal on how that would play out throughout the winter.
That would be my logical for November 30th, just so we, hey, what's going on? Or if we see something, we can tell you when we come back instead of.
And as I've said from the start of this project, I want to keep the pressure on you to get that Ramapo entrance.
Well, we're
done.
trying. If you drive by it, you'll see our working on it.
I've seen you, there's a lot of work going on there, and I appreciate that, but I still want you to press to get that done. And, this is the only leverage we have.
Well, we do very much respect the restrictions, and we've been working within them. And again, if they were left in place and we were to use the entrance, we're not asking to change the use of the entrance. We're just asking to extend the use of it, not change the use, just extend the use. If we wanted to do a trial basis for the winter, just take pressure off, but we're happy to do whatever the board would prefer.
As a first go around, and let's see how it goes, I would make a motion to extend this to November 30th with the same conditions as you've been operating under now. If you need another extension, I'm glad to come back beginning of November. I don't think that's a tremendous burden. You don't have to present any plans. It's just basically what you said tonight. So that's my motion, if I can have a second for it. So, all in favor?
Quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Can we give them specific questions that we need answers by November 30th?
What they want to use it for. What activities, more specific, what do you want to use it for throughout the winter? We'd invariably keep the restrictions, the 9 to 3, the 5 trucks, or 5 buses, or whatever you want to use it for. If you're bringing personnel in, and I don't think you'll be at that stage, I think it's more heavy equipment, but I don't know, and it's weather dependent to some extent. And it's very muddy, I don't think you can do a lot of work up there for a few days.
We'll work through we'll work in the mud, yeah, it's no problem. Yeah.
All right, so the November 30th motion is on the table, so.
That would be the December meeting, we would come back?
No, you come in November. So then, because December would be too
Oh,
late.
yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, so it'd be
November 7th.
Okay.
2 months from now, if you need to come back. And our 2 votes.
I'll say yes, I support extending it. I just wish it was longer.
Ned?
Do you want to make a motion for your?
I know there's a motion pending on.
No, there is a motion now. We're voting on the November 30th.
All right, well, I'm voting yes for that.
Okay, so it's 6-0.
We're voting now?
No, we have voted.
Yeah.
We did vote. So. Okay, so we're not.
Okay.
Go
It's a
ahead.
longer extension, basically.
Right.
To give you more time.
So we'll have something for the November 7th meeting. Okay.
If you don't have the Ramapo entrance done, if you do.
Well, we hope to. Like you said, we're putting pressure on everything to get it going, so.
Okay,
Thank you, appreciate it very much.
okay,
Thank you.
no problem. All right, the final item is to schedule a public hearing for a clearing, filling, and grading permit for a single-family home in the Maple Brook area. As per council, she's advising us not to discuss the specifics of this, right, Kelly?
Correct, because they're not here.
They're not here, they told us they couldn't be here tonight, so it's no
Okay.
surprise. But we've also been advised that we can just schedule a public hearing on this application for the October meeting. So I'll make a motion to do that. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that'll be scheduled for
It's October 3rd.
October. Final thing, training, and full disclosure, I need training. Also, I believe Susan is done,
I think I have 1 hour left.
right? So, it's September, so I think we, at least for myself, we have to get on.
Have there been any other opportunities?
No, I would,
I
it's,
generally send them when I receive them, I just haven't seen anything new.
well, during
I'll
the
start
summer,
with
I would think, yeah, if we could give that fellow in Rockland,
Yeah.
well, 'cause, I think most of us, if not all of us, need it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone want to do this October's meeting.